Hello, everybody. You are listening to AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. This is Clutch with Keon Rose. I'm Keon Rose. We are talking about more Tennessee football today. We're only 30 days or so from basketball season beginning, so we'll try and bring you some of that, especially a lot of college basketball. The SEC is going to be stacked this season. You know that Kentucky's always going to be good. We hope to see more and better things out of Tennessee since they hired Rick Barnes, the former Texas basketball coach, and LSU brings in their biggest recruit since Shaquille O'Neal this past summer. So Ben Simmons is going to arrive at LSU, and we'll see how that changes the SEC and the basketball landscape, which of course we know mostly for football and appreciate mostly for football. But I mean, let's be fair. Basketball brings a lot of money too, and the more teams you can make into the NCAA tournament, the more prestigious your conference looks. And maybe we might see the SEC gain a little bit more traction as a basketball conference. It's always going to be football here, obviously, but it's never out of the realm of possibility. You can find us in a number of different ways here on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. If you would like to listen to us live and you are not in your car and tuned into AM 1240, never fear. The TuneIn Radio app is here. Simply go to the Apple Store or Google Play Store and download the TuneIn Radio app. It's absolutely free in every sense of the word. And you just give us a follow, press play. You'll have Hot News Talk Radio wherever you go. You can also find us on hotnewstalkradio.com, and you can search for us on YouTube. Search Hot News Talk Radio. And we'd love to hear from you on Facebook and Twitter on the Hot News Talk Radio pages. Sometimes people stop by on the Facebook page. More people ought to stop by. Tell us what you feel. Tell us what you know. You have any news to report? You report, the world decides. AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio. We ended yesterday's show talking about Butch Jones and, talking about how his seat in Tennessee has gotten a little bit toasty. He's not on the hot seat yet. He's not in the position where you want to fire the guy. He's been such a good recruiter, and he's been such a great changer of the culture of the Tennessee locker room in terms of the things that you will and will not stand for. From a criminal perspective, you want your student athletes to behave themselves. You want your student athletes to carry themselves with a level of dignity, with a level of pride. That part of a coach's responsibility is raising young men. That when parents say you're going off to play for the University of Tennessee, that ought to imply that you're going to learn to be a better person. You're going to continue to grow to be a better person. And I believe, because if you look at Butch Jones, and I was actually talking to Mr. Judd before the show began, if you look at Butch Jones, Butch Jones is not the most excited guy. He's very calm. He's very demure. He talks like he's talking down some bullet points. He's not the most outgoing guy. I mean, Brett Bielema, he is not. That's for sure. But he's telling these kids and he's telling these parents something, because he's got one of the best recruiting classes. I believe it was a top 5 recruiting class. He's getting good players to show up. And I personally believe that he's basically telling these parents, look, you send your kid here, they're going to be better off as a person with me, not just a football player, as a human being. That's something that if you're a parent, your son or daughter, you would send them off to Butch Jones. It's what people see with Coach K over at Duke in basketball, that you're willing to send your child to go be coached by Coach K because he's so good at developing people, not just basketball players. He's so good at developing people. Is hugely important as educators in developing people, not just the thing that you want your students to learn. Because let's face it, I mean, one of the big things about college sports is that these guys, especially the top guys, the ones that are going to be drafted, the ones that are going to be drafted high, they're not majoring in communications. They're not majoring in English lit. They're not majoring in biology. They're majoring in sports. But if you were majoring in biology or English lit or communications, it's still important that as you interact with your teachers, that they help you to be a better person. And Butch Jones has done an amazing job of that at Tennessee. The things that they don't tolerate over there now, that they used to tolerate just because, oh, you're talented, we'll let you get away with this. That the University of Florida, for instance, has been known for that for years. And everywhere Urban Meyer goes, over at Ohio State, Urban Meyer will let some things slide in the name of winning, which is not okay. Which is not okay. But I can't say that I can't really judge. I still watch Ohio State football and enjoy it largely in part because those guys are so talented. But that feeds into the problem too. But it's not okay to sacrifice good character to win. But that it happens. Butch Jones has decided not to go that way. So he's done a lot of good. I'm defending him here for a little bit because I'm about to turn on him. Okay, and I don't want to. Okay, I didn't want it to be this way. I thought Tennessee had a good enough team this year that on paper they were definitely a lot better than the teams that they faced. But look, they have a bad habit of blowing football games and losing games that they ought to win and snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. That's not how this is supposed to go. When you're a team that's this talented and with a coach that's supposed to be this good. And Butch Jones made a number of knuckleheaded decisions on Saturday that cost his team the football game, and it's a risk-reward thing. How much good is Butch Jones doing as compared to, is Butch Jones accomplishing his job? Because ultimately his job is to win. That you don't get to educate young men and you don't get to build a better culture in the locker room and you don't get to make Tennessee look good if you don't win. That's still the bottom line of his job. And not just winning, but winning the games that matter. Winning the games that matter to Vols fans. Winning against Florida. Tennessee is now 1-21 against Georgia, Alabama, and Florida since 2008. No coach they've really brought in has been that winner. And with the recruiting classes and with all the hoopla and all the change to Nike as a sponsor of the equipment, all of these things were supposed to sort of herald that change in that, okay, Tennessee is for real now. They're trying to get back on track, back to that tradition of winning that they had back in the 90s. It's been since the 90s since Tennessee's really been relevant. It's been a long time. And Butch Jones comes in, and he comes in with the promise of recruiting. It's not a promise that he said with his words, because, again, Butch Jones is the very cautious. He doesn't say more than he needs to say. He hedges his bets. He won't come out and guarantee a victory. And again, I say Brett Bielema, he is not. Brett Bielema will do these things, and Brett Bielema will be very, very wrong, and we will all stand there and laugh at Brett Bielema, and then he'll go out next week and guarantee another victory. That's just who he is. And this is who Butch is. Butch isn't going to go out and say all of those things. So it's less embarrassing in that regard. But people want that pride from Butch to come out and say, look, we're going to kick butt. We're going to try and own the SEC this year. And he hedges his bets, and then the Vols lose, and everybody's starting to see through the act. He didn't promise anything with his words, but he promised it with his recruiting. Like, guess what? If you are sucking up all the best players in the area, okay, then we expect you to win. That I talk about all the time. Sports fans have expectations, and a lot of times they are unreasonable. But this is a perfectly reasonable expectation. If you have the best players, you should win. You have the best guys to put the best product out on the field. You ought to win. That's not unreasonable to believe. This isn't just something that we built up in our minds. These players are 4-star and 5-star recruits out of high school. We know their names from the high schools that they go to. That's how good these guys are. We expect you to win. That's your job. That's your job. This is not one of those situations where the concept of winning and the idea of you going out there and accomplishing our goals is unreasonable. Now, was it unreasonable to say Tennessee ought to be national title contenders? Is it unreasonable to believe that they should have won the SEC this year? Yeah, that's a little unreasonable. Butch hasn't been here that long. Okay. That's a little unreasonable. If you were looking at these recruiting classes and you somehow balloon that into we should be champions, now you're getting into that realm of unrealism. We should probably get you checked somewhere. But just winning the games that you ought to win. It's the difference between a good team and a bad team. There's 3 tiers, and I like to think of them this way. Bad teams get beaten by everybody. Occasionally they'll win a game that they shouldn't win, but overall, bad teams get beaten by everybody. Then you've got that middle tier of good teams. Good teams sometimes beat the great teams. Sometimes they beat teams they have no business beating. But they handle their business against people they ought to beat. They beat the teams they should beat. They beat bad teams. The teams that are in front of them on the schedule, look, if on paper we're supposed to beat those guys, if we're a good team, we beat those guys. If we have the better coach, if we have the better players, we have the better talent, we beat those guys. And then, more often than not, we beat the guys that are on our level too. And then you get to that great tier of teams. The great teams show up to beat everybody all the time. They win the games they're not supposed to win. They win the games they're supposed to win. They beat the bad teams. They beat the good teams. They beat the teams on their level. They beat the teams that have strategic advantages over them. You just win. And how you choose to get to that path is entirely up to you. There's no singular way to build a great team, but you know the great team when you have it, and we all know it when we see it. That, you looked at the New England Patriots, not just, this season too, they look like it, but in the season that they went 18-0, they were undefeated up until the Super Bowl and lost in the Super Bowl. That was a great team. They beat everybody, and we could all see that just based on the way they were playing on the field. It wasn't like, oh, the Patriots are squeaking by and winning by 2 points here and 3 points there. They were steamrolling everybody. Michael Jordan's Bulls teams that won. Those were great teams. The Cleveland Cavaliers last year in the second half of the season. The first half, they were rough. They had to learn to play together. They all got together, and they had to learn how to gel. But that was a great team in the second half of that season. That was a great team. They beat everybody. Like you're supposed to if you're going to be a great team. People aren't asking Tennessee to be a great team. In my mind, that's an unreasonable expectation of them so far. No one's asking for greatness. Just asking for goodness. Beat the teams you're supposed to beat. If you look at the roster for Tennessee and Florida from top to bottom, especially on the offensive side of the ball, Florida had the better defense by a little bit, but on the offensive side of the ball, Tennessee was the better team, and it wasn't that close. If you just look at talent. And if you look at the fact that this is Jim McElwain's first year as Florida head coach, and he's a very good coach, and he's going to turn Florida into a very good team. You can mark my words on that one. But he shouldn't be ahead of Butch Jones, who's been at Tennessee now. This is going on to what, year 3? You ought to be beating Florida. If you have the better team, and you did, beat them. And if you have a 13-point lead going into the fourth quarter, definitely beat them. That's not up for debate. And you have to start looking at Butch Jones a little bit sideways and going, is he the right guy for this job? And I only ask that because while he does a lot of great things off the field, his on the field decision-making is directly responsible for the losses. It's not like you can hide it somewhere or put it somewhere else. Butch Jones substitutes receivers when he doesn't need to. He'll have one guy who's hot, and then 3 other guys will come in that weren't even playing. What are you doing? You've got to stick with somebody. You've got to actually make a decision, Butch. You do. are going to cost the Vols a lot more wins than just this one. I think the Vols are in for some disappointing losses this season unless we can reach into some dark hole and find Butch Jones a common sense coach. Because the things that he did and the decisions that he made in that game defied common sense. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And DraftKings and FanDuel, I'm here to pound on them some more here on Clutch with Keon Rose on AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
Media Network's coverage of the NFL. Hi, this is Jerry Recco. Join Kevin Ray, Danny White, and myself for all the action.
Hot News Talk 1240.
If it's the NFL, it's right here.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Hot News Talk 1240.
That smells so good. Smells like a big Italian dinner. But you're going to walk out with two. Buy one hot pizza, get one for free. 2 pizzas. You got the 2 for the price of 1 at Raphael's Italian Restaurant and Pizzeria. My favorite Italian restaurant of all the time. Now, I'm living in Hicks, and I go to Raphael's right down the street in Hicks and Pike, right near Highland Plaza. You're in Saudi Daisy? At Raphael's Italian Restaurant and Pizzeria in Saudi Daisy. Just next to Saudi Daisy Church of God. Hey, you're on Signal Mountain? There's a Raphael's Italian Restaurant and a Pizzeria. It's right on the main drag. You're going to love the pasta, the pizza. Buy one hot pizza, get one for free. 2 pizzas. You got the 2 for the price of 1 at Raphael's Italian Restaurant and Pizzeria. Tastes so good. Bring the whole family. Come on, Raphael's Italian Restaurant and Pizzeria. Mangia. Salute.
Tired of insurance companies? Tired of doctors that won't spend time with you? Do something different. Leave the sick care model of medicine and come to Dr. Danielle Mitchell, the Chattanooga Sports Institute and Center for Health, where we're interested in long-term health solutions, not the quick fixes. Come see me, Dr. Danielle Mitchell, at the Chattanooga Sports Institute and Center for Health. I'm all about the long-term healthcare solutions and doing what's best. On the web, you can find me at ChattanoogaSportsInstitute.com. That's ChattanoogaSportsInstitute.com. Or call us at 875-1005, 875-1005, or find us on social media, Facebook, Dr. Danielle Mitchell, or the ChattanoogaSportsInstitute.com. Let's go, ya!
Are you tired of working in corporate America, or have you recently lost your job and would like to consider owning your own business? If you are, please call me, as I can help you look at franchises or business opportunities that fit you, the economy that we're in, and the type of businesses that are right in the greater Chattanooga area. After I help my clients find the right opportunity, I also help them find the best way to finance the business, including paying yourself through the startup phase. If you would like to learn more about opportunities that may be right for you, please call me for a free assessment. My name is Bruce Krebs at the Entrepreneur Source. Phone number is 423-875-5621.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Costa, host of the Costa Report, every Sunday at 9 a.m. My guest this week was the former Secretary of Education, Mr. William Bennett, whose controversial new book titled America the Strong is getting ready to hit bookstores this month. Don't miss a thought-provoking one-on-one conversation with William Bennett this Sunday at 9 a.m. on the Costa Report, right here on AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Hot News Talk 1240.
Questions continue to linger around Butch Jones. I think that he's a good coach. I also think that he lacks common sense. I think he lacks common sense. It's not rocket science. It's football. And I understand that, Joshua Dobbs, the Tennessee quarterback, is studying to be an actual rocket scientist, but that's not the point here. This is football, okay? There are just certain things in the game that it's common sense. You don't need to think outside the box. When you need to go for a 2-point conversion because 2 touchdowns will beat you, you don't kick an extra point. I don't care what your little chart says. I don't care what it says. It's a situational chart that was made outside of the context of a game. You're in the game. You're in the heat of the moment. This is the actual situation. Time is running out. You're up 12. If you score 2, they can't beat you with 2 touchdowns. It's just strategy. It's just strategy. And I feel really bad for the players at Tennessee because of how hard they played. Except on that last play, actually. That last play, I don't want to try and speculate as to how hard guys were running and how hard they were trying, but I mean, they weren't exactly tackling Leonard Fournette. And they weren't exactly trying to catch a guy who was juking people out of their socks. He ran in a very awkward round circle, and every Tennessee defender in the area, all 3 of them, took the worst possible angle of attack, and he just ran right past him. How does that happen? That's just good. But for the most part, the Tennessee players played their hearts out, played very, very hard, and they were let down by their coach, who made 1 or 2 tactical decisions that didn't make any sense whatsoever. Some interesting things to note about Tennessee and how disappointing this loss is. I got some stats and some numbers here for you. Won't inundate you in them because stats on the radio, people kind of like them, but nobody really likes them. 4th down stats. Florida, 5 for 5 on 4th downs. And Tennessee couldn't stop them. I wonder if Florida at some point just thought, let's just keep going for it on 4th. I mean, they had to because they were trailing, but like even if they were leading, do you actually think that Tennessee can stop you? Because I don't. I'm starting to lose that faith in them. They had such a great 3rd down defense that it seemed like they just forgot. Oh yeah, no, we got to defend 4th downs too. You do. That too is also part of the game. Okay? Defending 4th down. That sometimes teams are going to go for it. And it looked like Jim McElwain was more aggressive than Butch Jones, and it paid off ultimately. Butch Jones turtles late in games. 4th quarter rolls around, and he's trying to play not to lose. He's not playing to win. And that puts you at a disadvantage when the other guy is playing to win. Jim McElwain was doing everything possible to win. And I think the worst thing that can happen to Tennessee is that they have a lead going into the 4th quarter. In fact, I know that's true. I've got another stat here for you that proves it. Teams that have been leading by at least 13 points going into the 4th quarter this college football season of all the games played are 188-3. So teams that have led by at least 13 points going into the 4th quarter have won 188 times and only lost 3 times. That means if you have a 13-point lead going into the 4th quarter, you are far more likely to win than to lose. Correct? If you have a point of all the teams played, you have a 13-point lead going into the 4th quarter. They have only lost 3 times. But of those 3 losses, 2 of those are Tennessee. That's depressing to me. That's very depressing. Of the 3 losses that teams have had, all teams in college football, of the 3 losses that all teams have had when leading by 13 going into the 4th, Tennessee has lost 2 out of the 3 times that teams have lost. It is so improbable to be that team. And Tennessee's that team twice. And it's not the players' fault. Because they're putting up points in the first half of these games. But you can see the play calling get more conservative as the game goes along. Like, okay, we have the lead. Okay, we have the lead. Let's just sit on it. Let's just sit on it. Let's hide. And then Butch Jones turtles. And here comes Oklahoma. He turtles. And here comes Florida with a walk-off 63-yard touchdown. And then, the field goal was just the depressing cherry on top of the depressing cake. The missed field goal there at the end that almost went in and was just right of the goalposts. I I don't know what to tell you anything. I can't tell you anything more than that. Except we need to seriously look down and consider Butch Jones as the coach of the Tennessee Volunteers because he lacks common sense, at least football common sense. Right? Like we all have that friend in life that's book smart, but then has no common sense whatsoever, has no street sense, could tell you how to protect yourself, would still get robbed on the street somehow because they couldn't put two and two together metaphorically. Weird stuff. But you know that person. In every group of friends, there's that person that's just like the common sense is just not there. You know, it's not that they didn't have forethought. It's not that they didn't think about what they were doing. It's a lack of common sense. You know, would just get ripped off by a scam artist, would never see it coming because they just didn't have the common sense to work through what it was this person was saying. That on an intellectual level they understood, but on a common sense level they didn't. It happens. You know these people. You know who I'm talking about. You know exactly who I'm talking about. That person in your life. You know who they are. You don't have to name them. They could be your friend. They could be your brother. It could be your sister. You don't have to name them. I'm just saying, you know. And Butch Jones is our college version of that. Our college football version of that. Butch Jones is our friend that knows football but doesn't know football. Butch Jones is our friend that is trying to figure out whether or not he should kick an extra point and go for two based on a chart. And that was his explanation for why he did it. And he was perfectly okay with that explanation. And the rest of us are scratching our heads and wondering why. He's that friend for us. He is. This is AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. You're listening to Clutch with Keon Rose. I'm Keon Rose. Thank you for joining me today. It's a very cloudy and foggy day here in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And despite the fact that the sun is well hidden from view, it is still incredibly hot. Way too hot. Makes me upset. Not a fan. So I might after this show just go home and just keep listening to Hot News Talk Radio all day. Go to hotnewstalkradio.com and stream the radio live. I actually don't own a physical radio, which I used to. When I was a kid, I had one with a dial, and it was actually an old radio from the 80s, and I loved that thing. And we had to throw it out, but I really enjoyed that thing. But now that I don't own a physical radio, I can listen to Hot News Talk Radio on the TuneIn Radio app on my mobile device. I have my Android phone, and I listen to Hot News Talk Radio on my computer as well. We also have the NFL here on Hot News Talk Radio. Every Sunday we have double headers very often, and we've got the best games both in and out of market a lot of times. Check us out. We've got a lot of great divisional matchups here on Hot News Talk Radio. I want to talk about DraftKings a little bit. I don't know if I'm a fan of DraftKings. In fact, check that. I'm not a fan of DraftKings. I think that what they're doing is it feels morally dubious in a way that gambling, just straight up gambling, like, oh, Pittsburgh is playing Arizona, doesn't feel like that. Yeah, I understand that DraftKings, FanDuel, these companies, they have the loophole that allows them to operate as basically legalized gambling, but it feels wrong, especially when it comes to college sports. And I remember they had an advertisement that they had a Tom Brady jersey in the what is it? They had a Tom Brady jersey in the background. It was framed in a glass thing, and then a couple of ads later, it was just a generic number 12 jersey. It was just red. It didn't represent any team. Well, FanDuel worked out a deal with the NFL Players Association, the Players Union, so that they can use the names and numbers and likenesses of these players to promote their product, which is fine. Like if I were trying to promote a football product, a product in which you could use the name of Tom Brady as part of the fun of the game, right? Like if Tom Brady is my fantasy football quarterback, I would want Tom Brady's name on a physical jersey too. That makes sense to me. What doesn't make sense to me, and what I've been trying to research and what I am seeming to have trouble finding, is DraftKings using the names of college athletes, that they have college football games. If you can draft players, I could draft Leonard Fournette for my college fantasy football team, and I could draft Trayvon Boykin for my college fantasy football team. It seems weird to me. I could draft Joshua Dobbs for my college fantasy football team and use Joshua Dobbs' name and real life statistics to propel my fantasy football team, thus earning me money, which to me it presents a twofold problem. And the ethics of sports is very interesting because we're willing to draw the line as far as winning is concerned. We're willing to draw the line just about anywhere. Like people that know full and well that dogfighting is not right, we're defending Michael Vick on some level. Like, well, maybe he grew up that way. Well, he still has to go to jail. Like we're willing to draw the line in a way that doesn't make any sense as far as our morals go and sports. Now you add gambling to the whole situation, and now I have no idea which direction our moral compass is pulling in. It's like you put an actual compass next to a magnet. North isn't true north anymore. We don't know where we're pointing. We have no clue. And so we're using college athletes' names. And one thing is that since these athletes are not compensated and they're not even allowed to unionize, they cannot defend you. They cannot stop you from using their name and likeness to make money. But people are investing in DraftKings. People are investing in FanDuel. And these companies are making money off of the names of players that can't make money. To me, I have no problem with FanDuel and DraftKings allowing you to use the name of Tom Brady or Peyton Manning or any of these professional athletes who are monetarily compensated for playing the game that they play. But the college athlete isn't paid at all. He isn't. Not even a little bit. He can't do anything that would make him money regarding if you know, like Todd Gurley last year got in trouble, University of Georgia, Todd Gurley had his jerseys. He signed his jerseys. He sold his jerseys. The NCAA suspended him from play. He couldn't make money off of selling his own jersey. But DraftKings can make money off of his name? That schools will sell the jerseys of players all the time, and they get away with it because they don't use names. You don't put Nick Chubb's name on the jersey, you just use his number. And then you sell that. And everybody knows it's Nick Chubb. Even Nick Chubb knows it's Nick Chubb, but he can't do anything about it because that's just his number. That's just the number. It's just a jersey with that number on it. It's not his name. But DraftKings, FanDuel, they have college games, and a lot of college conferences have stepped up and tried to get these things shut down. But I'm wondering why it is that they can't get it shut down in the first place and why there isn't a lawsuit forthcoming. Trying to find it somewhere. Can't find it. But we'll talk about the conferences trying to get this shut down because this is morally dubious. No? A little bit unethical. We'll talk about that. Maybe a little basketball. More here on Clutch with Keon Rose. I'm Keon Rose, and this is AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio.
Cloudy skies with a few scattered showers will continue out there through the afternoon. High temperatures into the upper 70s. Tonight, a few more showers will pass on through, lows mid and upper 60s. For the midweek, still lots of clouds through Thursday. A passing shower or two on Wednesday with highs east day into the 70s. Did you know that you could purchase a home now with little or nothing down? Find your dream home with McBriar Realty. Call McBriar Realty at 706-657-2353 or McBriarRealty.com. And I'm WDEF News 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Orr.
On AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Are you tired of feeling like just another account number to your financial advisor? Try something refreshingly different. Call Edward Jones Financial Advisor Patrick Neal in Hickson at 870-7894. Edward Jones, making sense of investing. Member SIPC.
We've got a table here at Delia's in Saudi Daisy, ready to delight in a plate of authentic Mexican food. Delia's spreads a rich selection, loaded nachos, crazy chicken, homemade tamales, maybe the enchiladas with beef, chicken, pork, quesadillas. Every dish beautifully pictured on the menu to help us decide. Join us for lunch or dinner. We're at Delia's in Saudi Daisy on Dayton Pike near the Thrasher Light. Here's dinner. Delia's uses the freshest ingredients, cooked to perfection. Nachos, homemade. Delia's open every day except the Lord's Day. For lunch and dinner, treat yourself to Delia's genuine Mexican food. In Saudi, call 521-7145. That's 521-7145.
Here you are, working to keep your customers happy and to manage your cash flow. IRS problems are the last thing you need, but here they are, flapping about you like vultures. Get help from Eric Pelton and his team of accountants at E.J. Pelton Company. Audits, letters, proposed return changes, 1099s, penalty threats. Pelton Tax Resolution Services brings peace of mind and helps you keep more of what you've earned. EJPelton.com. Offices on Brainerd Road and in Saudi Daisy, just north of the Bilo. That's EJ Pelton. Call 622-3156. Think ahead, 622-3156. An alternative to insurance for people of Christian interest is Samaritan Ministries, a cost-sharing group whose fellow members contribute to your medical expenses. Hi, David Tulis here, member of Samaritan Ministries. I have no deductibles, no silly in-network rules. I choose my own doctors. I'm a cash payer and get the cash discount with med providers. I'm 100% compensated by Christian families around the nation who send their checks directly with a personal note and pray for me in my medical distress. I have a family membership. I write a $405 check every month to a person in need. Just love it. Learn more about Samaritan Ministries Tuesday, September 29 at 7 p.m. at Brainerd Hills Presbyterian Church on East Brainerd Road. It's a mini conference on the Christian alternative to medical insurance.
DraftKings and FanDuel and DraftKings, and they have a hold over America right now. At least they'd like you to believe that, because if you've watched football this Saturday or Sunday and couldn't seem to get that out of your mind, the fact that DraftKings is offering one-day fantasy sports leagues, and how could you get it out of your mind? They remind you literally every commercial break, and I mean every commercial break. They are throwing money everywhere. They are sponsoring everything and everyone, and they're all over the place. They are all over the place. You cannot hide from DraftKings, and I feel like there's such a thing as oversaturation, that you can have a commercial that you hear so often and see so often that you're just annoyed by it. It's on you listen to every sports channel, DraftKings, all over the place. Hey, maybe I can get DraftKings to sponsor this show. And the irony therein, I could be a hypocrite. I'm not gonna lie, I would take their money. Do you know why? Because I wouldn't be able to stop DraftKings, and I wouldn't be able to make DraftKings go away by not taking their money. They have so much of it, and they were spreading it everywhere. And I just find it weird that of all the people making money, I can make money on DraftKings. I can sign up for DraftKings today. I can start the one-day fantasy football league and see how it goes. Maybe put my $5, $10 in or whatever, and see if I can't make the 25,000 whatever amount of money they say. You know, I can do that, but I think it's wrong. But even if I did that, like, by not playing DraftKings right now, I am not affecting DraftKings not one bit. Can't stop them. Can't stop them. You need a lot of people to realize that this is wrong. So that's why we're talking about it. I didn't want the show to be a DraftKings FanDuel show, but it extended beyond what I intended because there's so much to talk about with it in terms of the ethics involved. College football players, college athletes cannot participate in FanDuel and DraftKings. They cannot participate, which is weird because college athletes are part of the allure of college sports, or so the NCAA would have you believe, is that they are amateurs. College athletes are amateurs, that they play this game because they love it, because they love their school, because they have pride for where they are. And so you're watching a bunch of guys basically be modern day gladiators just for the sheer pride of the thing. There's no money. Okay, they're not making millions of dollars. When a guy goes out and gets injured, you feel something more for him than the professional athlete because they're just doing it for the love of the game. That's what the NCAA is trying to sell you on. That amateur sports are superior because players just have that love. They're not playing for money. And that's somehow supposed to make this inherently different, that they're not playing for money. But part of the reason why these players aren't playing for money is because they're not allowed to play for money. And by the way, if you're playing to get into the NFL, if your dream is to make it to the NBA, you are playing for money. Not money that you have right now, but the playing for the promise of money and playing for money are the same thing. There's no difference between either of those things. Okay? When you go to work, they don't physically pay you per hour, right? They're not gonna. You work at Amazon. When you work from 8 to 9, they don't show up and hand you $12.50. They pay you at the end of the pay period. You're being paid. You're working for the promise of money at the end of the pay period. You're not working because they're paying you hourly. So if you play in college now because you know you're going to be a number one pick in the draft, that's not philosophically different. And therefore, in the strictest sense of the word, you're not playing from that sense of amateurism. You are still an amateur technically, but you are not an amateur because somewhere down the line, you are promised money. Now, most of these guys are amateurs because let's face it, not everybody's making it to the NBA or NFL. 5% or whatever that number is, it's a very low number, actually make it in the league and last more than 3 to 4 years. There's just not that many people good enough to continue to be in the NFL year after year after year. But I find it weird that the sense of amateurism means that these guys aren't allowed to make money on what they do because that's what the NCAA wants to sell you. But then they can't gamble on games. And of course not. Of course you wouldn't be allowed to gamble on games. I remember we talked about Pete Rose. Pete Rose can't make it into the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame because he may have gambled on games in which he was coaching when he coached and in which he was playing when he played. Because if Pete Rose can affect the outcome of a game based on what he is gambling on, that lowers the quality of the sport. That makes sense. What doesn't make sense is if FanDuel and DraftKings aren't considered gambling, and if the NCAA is truly amateur, then the student athletes should be able to play because they're not supposed to be different from any of the other students. The only thing different between a student athlete and a student is that athlete is attached to their name. Nothing they do should be different. They shouldn't be treated differently. Allegedly, except they can't play FanDuel, but their roommate can. They can't make any money off of any of the things that they do. And it would be nice to say, hey, one player would be enough, right? Like one player standing up to the NCAA and saying, I want you to pay me or I'm not playing would be enough. But there are so many good, so many talented players. And you would miss your opportunity to be seen by an NFL scout or an NBA scout with that opportunity to make money down the road. The NCAA wouldn't miss you You are one nameless dude in a sea of dudes. Like, how many great players decided, you know what, I am going to get paid going straight out of high school. I'm playing in Europe in college basketball. It's worked out for a few guys too. Brandon Jennings went and played in Europe, came back, got drafted, decent point guard. It happens. Guys will do it. And does the NCAA miss them at all? No. You don't miss a guy in a bunch of team sports. Just one guy. A lot more players are going to have to stand up and say, hey, this is not acceptable. And I don't understand how DraftKings and FanDuel are allowed to use player names and get away with it. That's wrong. That's wrong. They are allowed to get away with it. And I understand, like, first off, DraftKings and FanDuel, your entire organization and company is built on a series of loopholes. You're built on loopholes. You've got a gambling loophole, and then you are allowed to do college sports and use players' names on another loophole, which is that you're not actually selling their names and selling their likeness, which to me is, yes, you are. Yes, you are. The draw of me playing college fantasy football is that player's name, that I'm not going to be trying to draft imaginary people that I don't know. Okay. It's that the Leonard Fournette that I'm drafting for my fantasy football league corresponds with and is directly affected by the performance of real life Leonard Fournette. So it's not just any Leonard Fournette in America. Okay. I don't draft Leonard Fournette and find that the Leonard Fournette that I drafted plays in high school. Okay. At James Madison High School in San Antonio, Texas. I didn't find that at all. I click on that and find that that is LSU's Leonard Fournette. It's the same guy, but Leonard Fournette doesn't see a dime. Not one nickel off of it. And the reason why the conferences in the NCAA are going after DraftKings and FanDuel and saying that you can't do this, that you can't use these players' names, is not because they care about the players so much. It's not because they're a magnanimous group of people that cares whether or not the players are compensated for their names being used. It's because they're not making any money off of it either. If college football could do it, if college basketball could do it, they would. If they could find a way to work with the DraftKings and FanDuel and make money off of them too, they would. And this wouldn't be a problem to them at all. It's exploitation, plain and simple. And college athletes are just trying to make it to the league, to the pros. And you'd be willing to sacrifice a little bit of your rights now for the opportunity to achieve your dream down the road. At least they would. That's the decision that consistently gets made by student athletes. Even though their stature as student athletes, it's being forced on them. This idea that college sports has to be, in order for its purity to exist, these guys cannot get paid. Like, we would stop watching college sports if guys got paid. We wouldn't. They're very good. And in college is still not the pros. It's still not. And this is still unethical. And it ought to be illegal. That the reason why we sit down and watch these games is the players. Okay? Nobody sits down to watch a football game on Saturday and thinks fondly of Mark Emmert, the president of the NCAA. You know why? Because he's not playing. Mark Emmert makes a lot of money to be the president of the NCAA. Mark Emmert's paycheck comes in part, if not entirely, as a result of athletes playing sports that he himself is not participating in. And we want athletes to be tough. We want them to fight through injuries. We want them to do all of these things for our entertainment, all the while not paying them. And to me, I don't have a problem with that at all, the not paying part. The problem that I have is that you can't not pay them and pay everybody else, okay? You can't have Nick Saban and his $1 million contract. Meanwhile, his Alabama players make nothing. That's where the problem is. That's where it continues to be. And now you've got DraftKings and FanDuel, and they've just opened up another way, another avenue with which to exploit college athletes. I can play it. You're a player at UTC, you can't. You can't choose yourself for your own fantasy football team. You're not allowed to play, which makes you not like any of the other students around you. Because you can influence the outcome of a game, that makes you, by definition, not an amateur. The amateurism is a sham. It has been. And the thing is, the compensation of an education, that's what the NCAA runs out there as their reason for this, then why they're allowed to not pay players, is because they offer an education to those student athletes. It's not guaranteed. It isn't. If you are an athlete and you break your leg and you can't come back and play, they're not going to keep giving you a scholarship if you can't play. So then that education that you were trading your career for, an education requires time to finish, right? You need all of the credit hours before you are allowed to graduate. So part of an education is not useful. You break your leg your sophomore year, you can't go back and play. They stop giving you that scholarship. Now you have half an education. Congratulations. It's not useful. Not everybody gets a full scholarship. By the way. Oh, and by the way, you're asked to do all the other things that other students do. On top of film study for the game, training for the game, learning the playbook for the game, you're asked to pass all of your other classes as well and remain academically eligible. And I'm not saying it's impossible, because other players do it, but you're not compensated for any of it. Not one dime. Meanwhile, I am a journalism major, and if I write an article and somebody pays me for it, I'm not violating anything. I'm using my skills and my abilities to make money. The college athlete can't get paid for an appearance because then he's not an amateur. It's a sham. This is AM 1240. Hot News Talk Radio. This is Clutch with Keon Rose. See you in 23 hours.
Cloudy skies with a few scattered showers will continue out there through the afternoon. High temperatures into the upper 70s. Tonight, a few more showers will pass on through, lows mid and upper 60s. For the midweek, still lots of clouds through Thursday. A passing shower or two on Wednesday with highs each day into the 70s. Did you know that you could purchase a home now?
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
WSDT